Hi, and welcome everyone to today's Emerge Lakefront episode. Today, I have the great honor to have with me Stephen Reid. Stephen is a technologist, facilitator, and coach, trained in the fields of AI, complexity science, transformative coaching, and insight meditation. In this episode, we will be speaking about his journey that took him from Oxford to activism to founding the Psychedelic Society and also founding the event platform Dandelion for regenerative and co created events and gatherings, and many other fascinating activities of his. We'll also be speaking about his experience here at Emerge Lakefront and about his view on this larger transformation that we are finding ourselves right now in society, the role of AI, and how communities can have a huge contribution to this larger transformation. I can't wait to get started with our conversation. Welcome, Stephen.
Thank you very much for having me.
Okay. It's really an honor to have you here, and I'm really, really looking forward to this conversation. And at the very beginning, how we also were doing it in the other podcast episodes that we already recorded, I also wanted to ask you, who are you? And I know this is the shortest and probably largest question on this planet, but maybe you just want to share a little bit about, yeah, what do you do that people can get a feel of who is Stephen?
Yeah, sure. So if you go to my website, then I describe myself as a technologist, facilitator, and coach. And how that's manifesting right now, the technology part, well, I'm writing a book on technological metamodernism, and I'm also the founder and lead developer of an events and ticketing platform called Dandelion that's quite popular in the realm of holistic well-being, we could say, in the UK and now increasingly elsewhere. Facilitator, I've been co-facilitating future craft retreats over the past few years, like week-long residencies exploring regenerative and resilient futures. And finally, coach. Yeah, I trained as a coach a few years ago. So yeah, every week I'm working with a few clients one-on-one on their hopes and their dreams. So that's a fairly succinct answer to that question.
Wow. I already find it very fascinating to tap into like all these different qualities that you bring not only in your work realm, but also just you as a human being. And I'm very, very excited to hear from you in your words how you would describe your path of getting from wherever you were before to doing all of this, like various different things that you have just described. What brought you there?
Sure. Okay. So, well, I grew up in South London, and then at 18 went off to Oxford to study physics, and I've always been fascinated by the nature of reality. I just had this like burning curiosity that meant that I enjoyed my time at Oxford a lot, actually. Whilst my friends were then going and getting jobs in like for hedge funds and like applying their physics degrees to like make as much money as possible, I decided to do a master's degree in complexity science at the University of Bristol, where we were using many of the same like mathematical and computational techniques that I had been familiar with in the physics degree, but applying them to diverse fields, including biology and neuroscience and economics and social science. And yeah, that really broadened my horizons of what was possible to kind of understand through mathematics, we could say. Uh, and so during my studies, I studied some climate science, climate physics, and had this feeling of like, this sounds really bad. Like, why is no one doing anything about this? And so when I finished my master's degree, instead of taking up funding to do the PhD, I instead got really involved in the world of climate activism. So first with a group called Camp for Climate Action in the UK, and there we were like going to pieces of polluting infrastructure. Or actually, the main event I was involved with was surrounding the headquarters of the Royal Bank of Scotland, which was a bank that had recently been taken into public ownership during the financial crisis, but was still investing a lot of money in fossil fuels. And we were saying, we don't, it should, not in our name. It shouldn't. A public bank should not be like funding climate destruction in that way. I was with friends from Climate Camp that I then started an anti-austerity direct action group called UK Uncut when the new Conservative government came into power in 2010, and they were determined to like cut public services to the bone. They said the money's run out, nothing we can do about it. And we instead said, hang on a minute, well, before you start cutting our public services, why don't you actually collect money from these rich individuals and huge corporations that are very skilled at avoiding their tax and sending it through these networks of tropical islands and so on. And that really caught the public imagination in the UK. So that ended up having this period of about 4 or 5 years where I was like, activism really was my world. Got arrested twice, fortunately not convicted, but that was I learned a lot in those years. One of the things I realized is that it's the economy stupid, as they say, that in many ways it's our economic system which was driving climate collapse, which was driving things like global tax avoidance and evasion. I also started working for an economics think tank called the New Economics Foundation to like kind of just understand that more. And then
How old were you at that moment, just to have like a...
I guess in like 25, 26 at this point. And after a few years of working for the economics think tank, I became more interested in what in lakefront language we would call inner development. I had this bit, okay, so we need the economy to change, or to solve climate change, we need the economy to change. But then for the economy to change, we actually need to change ourselves. This is like the first time I kind of became aware of this idea, I guess. And it was around that same time that I discovered psychedelic substances and became convinced that they could be extremely potent tools for inner development. So I left the economics think tank to start the Psychedelic Society in the UK, which was campaigning for the legal regulation of psychedelic substances there. And I mean, in a way, I'm still kind of involved in that organization. After a few years, that organization became a worker cooperative, and we started developing a few different projects and brands. And one of those projects that came out of the Psychedelic Society, but now they're both sister organizations, is the Dandelion web platform that I think I mentioned at the start. The worker cooperative is called Symbiota. We have these four brands, including the Psychedelic Society and Dandelion. But it was really being involved in the Psychedelic Society that opened me up to the idea of inner development, and then led to an interest in meditation, for example, breath work, and in just other practices, tools, techniques that can actually help us to learn and grow and heal and develop. So it was kind of in that context of becoming more familiar with all of the different possibilities for personal growth and inner development that I first became aware of Thomas Bjorkman, who's a founder of Emerge Lakefront and many other very interesting organizations. And have been tracking Thomas's work and the work of Emerge, not the place, but the kind of the media platform at whatisemerging.com for almost 10 years now, I think, and have found that work very interesting and inspiring. In many ways, it informed the growth and the development of the Psychedelic Society and Dandelion now, really. So when I heard that there was going to be a physical location for Emerge, and of course I was very interested in. I was already actually living in Stockholm because my partner Laura, who also lives here, is Swedish, and so it was a pretty easy decision for us to just come from the north to the south of Stockholm. And I think it's been 4 months that we've been here now, and really enjoying it.
Wow. Yeah, thanks for inviting all of us into this journey. And actually, I have like millions of questions about your journey as well. And what I just thought really comes up very clearly in what you share for me is this massive curiosity and this drive to create things and to contribute. And I think before we take the segue to go to Lakefront, I'm actually curious to ask you, what what do you feel is driving you personally to create all these initiatives and get involved in so many different projects?
Hmm. Well, that's at best, I would like to think that it's my desire for a more loving, more compassionate, more caring world, and a path that has been very important to me in the past few years is insight meditation. I've attended a number of retreats at a place called Gaia House in the southwest of the UK, and I've been very inspired by Buddhist thought, philosophy. So in that language, to spread metta, to spread loving kindness, I think that's really kind of at the root of it, in a way. That it's if we can develop that loving kindness for ourselves and for each other, then we might start to create different kinds of economies, different kinds of social systems, and then be able to think about challenges like climate change in a very different way. So it sounds a bit cheesy, doesn't it? But yeah, really, really love is the root of it.
Thank you for sharing that. And I feel just like in the last couple of weeks and months that I at least got to know you a little bit. I feel like so much resonance in what you say, and this I feel so much in your presence that you contribute through being you with this loving kindness that I received just perceived just by being yeah with you and close to you. So I find it beautiful also to hear that in this context of all these initiatives of trying to make the world a better place, whatever that means, that it's rooted in this yeah loving kindness. And if we now take the segue towards the lakefront world, like Emerge Lakefront, you already spoke a little bit about like what attracted you here, that you already had some um, uh, resonance or some relationship with Emerge. Can you share again a little bit what Emerge is for people that don't know it, and speak into yeah the other parts that attract you to living here, to being part of this community?
So Emerge originally was a website media platform that was producing content connected to what some people call the liminal web scene, or the kind of metamodern scene, which was very kind of active and alive, particularly in the period like probably 2015 to 2019. I would say was its peak. And I found metamodernism a very useful theory or set of theories and framework, particularly the work of a think tank called Metamoderna, who published a book called The Listening Society. I read, I think for the first time, I think I was given a copy actually in Stockholm in like 2016 when I came here for a trip, and really blew me away, that book. So Emerge was kind of putting out articles, and actually there was a podcast of the same name that became part of the same project. Really, with this metamodern thought perspective, offering a metamodern lens on things that were going on in the world.
For people that don't know so much about metamodernism, do you want to describe in your words, just for people that are listening, like sounds interesting, but I actually don't know what he's talking about.
Yeah, sure. So there's a few ways into that. Metamodernism, as described by this think tank Metamoderna, for example, is a developmental stage theory, an adult development theory. So we're quite comfortable that that children develop, right? It's not controversial to suggest that like a 7-year-old is meaningfully more developed than a 4-year-old, or that a 13-year-old is meaningfully more developed than a 7-year-old. But then like we become adults, and then people start feeling a bit nervous about saying, "Oh, that adult is actually more developed than this adult in this way." It becomes a little bit taboo, but it's obviously true in some way that like development doesn't just stop on our 18th birthday. That it is possible to like keep growing, keep developing throughout our lives in all kinds of different ways. And it also makes sense then, if that's true at the level of the individual, that it could be true at the level of societies as well. And so metamodernism is the suggestion that that there comes a stage of human cultural development after postmodernism. So metamodernism in this language is like postmodernism, if you like. And before postmodernism, of course, we had modernism, and then people sometimes talk about the pre-modern world. So just to put that in order, we can talk about the pre-modern, the modern, the postmodern, the metamodern. And each of these stages of development are associated, I guess most interestingly, with like different like patterns of thought, we could say. And the flavor of the metamodern stage of development is very much one of synthesis and seeking to find like greater wholes, is finding these integral perspectives. It's actually very inspired by integral theory and the work of a guy called Ken Wilber. Sometimes people describe metamodernism as like a kind of more modern update of integral theory. This search for like higher perspectives that transcend and include like all kind of like what was previously on offer, has always been resonant with me, and in many ways is what physics is about. Like Einstein's theories of relativity, for example, like they include Newtonian relativity as limit cases in those theories. It's not like he just sort of said, well, Newton was all wrong. It's like Newton was right, like within certain parameters, within certain domains, but actually there was some higher perspective that like showed that there was even more kind of beauty and complexity to the universe than what Newton thought even. So, that search has been kind of with me for a long time in a way, and it was very exciting to see that people were applying that similar kind of thinking, but in more kind of human, social, cultural domains. So there you go. I think that will do for now. Yeah.
Amazing. And you were saying that this was also a part that Emerge was representing for you, or where you were establishing this relationship already, and then this thought came up. Wow, I could actually live here at Lakefront.
The place itself, yeah. So, um, was already kind of tracking the work of the Emerge Media platform, was already living in Stockholm. So then when I heard there was going to be like a physical Emerge location, Emerge Lakefront, it was a kind of no-brainer really to seek to get more involved. And me and my partner Laura have really been involved since the very beginning of the project. Not as residents for those first 6 months or so, but we've spent quite a lot of time here and have really been kind of cheerleaders of the project. And then the beginning of the summer, we thought, okay, it's time for us to actually see what it's like as residents as well. And as Thomas was telling us just the other evening, who's the co-founders of the project and the kind of original media platform. Well, he feels that the time is right for these more physical, embodied explorations into what these kind of theories are really about. That like it's we've done a whole load of good work, online and on podcasts and publishing papers and blogs and whatnot over the past decade, and the time is here, or I would say probably overdue, that we take all of that and we say, okay, what does that really mean when you're living in a big house in the south of Stockholm with 30, 50, 70 other people. I say that because we're currently 30, but of course we're hoping to get a bit bigger over the coming months. So, it's I had some idea of what to expect because I've lived in like kind of large community houses before. On one hand, maybe up to 10 people. And on the other hand, I've spent plenty of time at very kind of participatory and co-created like events and retreats, including like the European Burning Man events and a bunch of kind of micro burns, we could call them, for up to a couple of hundred people. It's a great way of like really meeting your edges living in community, isn't it? By finding where there is still some like growth and development and work.
Which edges are you meeting?
Right, yeah. Which edges am I meeting? I think the biggest one is like cultivating patience. Like I'm someone that like typically like really likes kind of moving fast through the world and doing things like efficiently, and that isn't always how communities work. Like there's and this phrase comes to mind, like move at the speed of trust, and that does mean pretty slowly sometimes. And on one hand, and then on the other hand, just accepting that like these kind of projects are often like resource constrained, like time or money and so on. Like, I mean, a great deal of time and money has been put into this place, and I'm so grateful for that. And it's really helped it to exist. And and also to some extent, it's easy to walk around and make a list of like, oh, but we could also do that and that and that and that and that, or if we just had like another few thousand euros, we could do this and that. And but actually, it's the fact that it would be if we were like without any of those limits, that it was like completely abundant. Like we could just click our fingers and anything could happen just through essentially like kind of spending money. That would actually give the quality a very different feel. And so I really appreciate the way that it is being done in this very decentralized, sociocratic, resident-led system, where actually the residents are the ones that are, for the most part, like taking care of all aspects of life in this place, and we have a little bit of like outside support here and there, but it's a pretty radical experiment in self-organization, apart from anything else Lakefront right now.
Yeah. And I totally resonate with what you were sharing. This growth edge, I share the same one, the growth edge for patience. I just remember that right now I was having a little meeting in our circle. We're organized in various different circles, and I'm part of the also part of this care circle. And I was sitting on this sensation of but I already shared this a couple of weeks ago. Why isn't everyone already living that? So I totally resonate with practicing patience. And yes, it's just very different living in a community versus being part of a retreat or facilitating a retreat. That's often what I compare it to. Or in my mind, in my subconscious, I compare being with a group of people together in one place, like living in a retreat. And it's just fundamentally different. It's not that everyone takes their complete time off just to be in a container for 1 or 2 weeks. It's like really a living exploration and experiment of how we can actually be together in a way that all our aspects of life can be here. The work life can be shared, the relationship life can be shared, the relating as a community, as a tribe can be shared. And yeah, I also find it just deeply fascinating, um, shaping that as well and being part of it at the same time. And you were speaking about the way how we organize us here at Lakefront. And I was curious, maybe you want to share through your lens and through your perspective of the experience that you've been gathering through living in other communities and being part of other cooperation projects, what you see, what is happening here at Lakefront, how we organize us in this sociocratic way that you mentioned.
Yeah, I guess we should really say kind of inspired by sociocracy, shouldn't we?
Inspired. Very good.
Rather than like really sticking to the letter of the law there. But yes, so well, as you know, we're organized into these currently like 11 circles. So you mentioned care. I'm in the recruitment, the finances and the systems circles. There's a media circle, there's a facility circle, and there's usually between 3 and 7 people in each of these circles, and they are responsible for like taking care of that aspect of life at Lakefront. And people are kind of agree as they're becoming residents to contribute at least 4 hours a week. I'm gonna like really revise that up a little bit because I think it's more than 4 hours a week. To kind of community life in this way. Currently under construction is also what is either going to be called like mission circle or maybe a board, which is going to be an elected circle. So it will include the two co-founders, and then 2 elected external advisors, and then 2 elected resident representatives. And I'm quite excited about that, actually, because I think that we've needed like a clearer, more efficient way of having communication between the founders and the residents in a way that's been a bit like random to this point, and it will help to formalize that. Yeah, I mean, this is like broadly similar to the systems that I've been familiar with, like or in my own work at cooperative, or this kind of systems that pop up on a more temporary basis for the period of a few months, like before, during, and after a camp at a Burning Man event, or a kind of similar like standalone event. And I mean, I think it's great fun. Yeah, there's I find organizing this way just like much more enjoyable than anything like more hierarchical and top down. For the most part, of course, there are all systems have their moments where you think, "Well, what are we doing? If only it was, just like this other thing." Like, and the grass is always greener to some extent, but yeah, I mean, kind of like tried out of different styles of organizing. For me, this decentralized, or we could say like, or even people talk about kind of teal or metamodern like way of organizing is my preference, both for the just the feeling of like self responsibility that it kind of creates in communities, and but also for my own personal growth and development. I find that just being part of such a system is is a great way of meeting those edges as we described.
Yeah, and before you were also talking a little bit about that this is not the only project in the entire world that has maybe a similar purpose or a similar way of organizing. And I would like to go from Lakefront and zoom out a little bit. Like, what is like the larger field of these type of organizations that organize themselves in a decentralized way?
Yeah.
And I know that you have a lot to share about that.
Yeah, I find this a very interesting topic, like, and how exactly to well, I can say there is a network of organizations, some of which I've had the pleasure of spending some time at, that have some similar quality to them, some similar vibe. Some of them are actually organized in relatively, more centralized ways, some of them more decentralized ways. So that isn't actually the defining characteristic necessarily. They're certainly kind of motivated by some like similar like questions, and consider certain kind of aspects of life to be important in the same way. Okay, so we're just to name a few of those. Yeah, there's Emerge Lakefront in Stockholm. There's Phaetopia in just south of Paris in France. There's Life Itself that also have a base like in south of France. There's Brave Earth in Costa Rica. Yeah, those are the 4 I've spent time at recently, and they're all places that you can go and spend like at least like a few months at a time. In some cases, it can be longer than that, and are are attuned in their own ways to this question of, as Lakefront puts it, like inner shift fail to change, I think is the banner on the front page of our website. But like really trying to make this link between how we develop as people can actually have a profound and profoundly positive effect on the world if it happens at scale, at least.
And I find it actually so beautiful now, already tying it back to the very beginning, when I see you and when I observe you and hear your story and how you already contributed to the world and how you are just by being you. I feel you're this embodiment of these at least 2 aspects: inner work and outer change. So the initiatives that you created and how you are contributing right now, and this deep commitment to, yeah, learning and growing either through living here or
That's very kind, and probably too kind, because I've made all of the mistakes along the way. So which has been like, yeah, like, sad and humbling and difficult at various moments, but ultimately I see that like even like kind of poor decisions that I've made and have yeah ultimately contributed to the person I am today, and have been somehow part of a growth journey. Like, and it's a nice idea, isn't it, to think that, oh, like, oh, my journey of inner development could just like all be sweetness and light and just like fancy retreats where we're just eating great food and doing yoga and so on. But usually it's not like that.
No, it's not
Usually,
like
there can be quite a lot of that, but there's going to be a few like dips on the road, I would say, for most people.
And if I think just about my own last couple of weeks, I spent the last week in a shadow work retreat, which was also very unpleasant on some parts. But I like to think about this journey kind of focusing on growth and development, which is connected to some sort of expansion. And maybe sometimes expansion comes through meeting an edge and being like, okay, here I can grow. So yeah, and living in a community like this, I think is a very good way to do that. And when we go back and look at this larger network of organizations, how do you see? Because I know that you also love complexity. How do you see, does this fit into the larger journey of society? Like, where are we right now in society, and why are all these organizations popping up in the way that they are? Like, what is the red thread that you see?
Yeah. For some reason, a Noam Chomsky line came to me about like growing the floor of the cage. I think the suggestion he makes in the talk where he says this is that um, financial capitalism, hyper-capitalism, turbo-capitalism, whatever you want to call it nowadays, or sometimes now people are even saying techno-feudalism. Like, that's the cage. Like, there's no getting out of the cage. It's actually too strong. Like, capitalism is just like too adaptable. Techno-feudal laws have too much power to like really bust out of the cage. However, what we can do through in some mysterious way is like grow the floor of the cage, just like make the cage larger and larger and larger until maybe at some point it kind of just does dissolve or become kind of irrelevant or obsolete in some way. And that's kind of what I feel that these communities, this network of communities, is doing. That uh, it's, I mean, they're in some of them they do have they're connected to activism and activists and activist projects, but largely they're not about kind of fighting the existing system. In this, or in a kind of Buckminster Fuller quote comes to mind as well. It's a very well-known one about like you don't change something by fighting the old thing. It's about creating something new that makes the old system obsolete. So that's really the vibe of these places. With all respect to kind of activists and all the people that are actually kind of out on the streets and like fighting against things that really deserve to be fought against. So I don't want to like put that down. And as you heard, like I spent many years of my life like in those activist movements, but something different is happening here. It's actually about just creating like entirely new like ways of living and being, and ideally at some point like new economic systems as well. Like one wonders whether at some point there will be some kind of community currency maybe that's like used across this network of different projects worldwide, or if not a currency, like maybe at least some kind of like time banking system or some way of like recognizing contribution within this network. Um, uh, and so it's that's what it's about for me, really. Like nothing less than like creating a new world, like but uh, in this way that is um, can seem small. Um, uh, like when you look at any given project, but like the more of these different kinds of projects that pop up and the more networked they can become. In physics we talk about in something called like a phase change or a phase shift sometimes, or where suddenly a system like flips from one state to another. Like the best example of course is just like water into ice or water into steam. Like sometimes these things do happen. Like it's possible for like a physical system, and so why not like a social system, like to suddenly flip this way. And that is in a sense what I think like we're doing here. We're kind of preparing for, and it might be in the context of some moment of collapse or crisis, like in the kind of existing systems with maybe another economic crisis, or who knows. And I'm not like willing that. I also don't think it's necessary. Like I think like it might simply be just some people kind of just becoming tired and bored of like no, I don't want to scroll TikTok anymore. I don't want to watch any more Netflix. I don't want to just go to my 9 to 5 job. I don't like just like rejecting like all that has been put on us as like the entertaining or like worthwhile, and just saying I want to just find like different sources of meaning in my life. And of course, one I think we're finding one very meaningful, one very nourishing source is communities, living in community. So I suspect that's going to be a big part of the puzzle. People at least spending like some of their time, maybe each year, maybe it's not kind of like every day all year, but like in projects like this, like actually living in quite close quarters to other fascinating people, because I think there's just so much nourishment and healing even that can come from experiencing that some of the time at least.
Yeah, thank you for this little glimpse already into like a future that could emerge soon. And I actually want to go like a little bit deeper into that one. I find it fascinating. If you were to imagine this phase shift of society, if it just happens, maybe it's not from one day over the other, maybe it's like a transition, but what kind of future scenarios do you see if this phase shift happens in a way um, that has uh, a positive outcome, however you define it, for our society? What could that look like?
Yeah. So actually, the first thing that came up for some reason was just health. I think we live currently in societies that like profit often from our ill health, um, and if nothing else, I hope the kind of world that we're creating is a healthy one, and that means both like just it means the food that we eat, it means the quality of sleep that we're going to get. It means the opportunities that we have to just like be in nature and move our bodies. It's also about like prevention being better than cure, all the ways in which we can just become more mindful about how we're what we're eating or how we are spending our time, and actually choosing and actually helping one another in a way to do what is best for us, rather than being kind of seduced by what's profitable for some multinational corporation. So, I hope this network of communities, and who knows what more it might become from that, is going to be like a really like healthy and just a live place to spend time. I think I mentioned the word love earlier, but like let's make love great again, or just like break the taboo, like around like and it's one of the reasons that I found like Buddhist philosophy very useful, because it's like very kind of detailed and rigorous. It's not like kind of wishy-washy around topics of love at all. And I mean, I hope that we can have like a politics of love, and that politicians can speak about love and can speak about that being one of their motivations, like as like for like wanting to like represent others and lead their communities. It's something's obviously gone wrong when language around love and compassion and joy is like, oh, that's this like kind of hippie or sort of like kind of thing, or this distraction from like the real stuff, which is growing GDP, and yeah, we're clearly missing something there. So I hope this the world that we're co-creating here is a healthy one, is a loving one, and is a joyful one, like this. Is it Emma Goldman? Like, if I can't dance, I don't want to be part of your revolution. Like that's that also comes to mind. Like that we have to be having a good time as we're doing this, and to some extent, it's like, and I don't think that's a kind of like optional extra. It's actually through people being involved in these kind of projects, like just like glowing with joy and just like being able to like talk about all of like the like positive experiences they've had, that will of course then attract others to want to spend time at Emerge or at Fair or whatever. And I very much see that happening. So yeah, there's a few things that come to mind off the top of my head.
Beautiful, beautiful. Um, and it feels to me also like already part of a perfect coming to close of this episode, like with this love and compassion, a beautiful, brighter future, how we can contribute to creating it. And I want to ask you, like at the coming slowly to a close of this episode, if there's anything else that you would like to share. Maybe there's something that you would love that others either know about you, or you want to share some kind of inspiration and impulse. Maybe there's something else on your mind and or heart where you feel like this would be beautiful to still have, share that. Then this could be the moment to do that.
I guess one of my main like kind of intellectual fascinations and curiosities at the moment is AI and like, the rapid development in technology in that field. Um, and I mean, I use it a lot. It's great fun, particularly when I'm writing code. Like it like can take away like 90% of the dull tasks that are involved in development, and really kind of put me in the position of just almost having this very short distance or time between like imagining something and then it kind of just like being on the screen or being on the page. And um, it's clearly having a profound impact on our society already, and I think it's going to continue to have a big impact, not least in the field of employment, on the area of employment. There's already data showing that like kind of job postings for like junior software developers have like fallen off a cliff over the past few years. And for many years, of course, people were like saying that sending their kids to, or getting their kids to like learn programming as as 5-year-olds, and saying like, well, we live in a technological world. The one subject that will really be useful no matter what is computer science. Just focus on that, and then kind of your career will be sorted. And it's a kind of an irony that that's actually seems to be like programming jobs that are one of the first to fall in a way. But I think there may be many other like sectors, like job sectors that are going to be impacted over the next years. And the unfortunately, I think the default outcome for this is just like a further concentration of wealth and like a further strengthening of the kind of techno feudal regime, if you like, where the power is like concentrated in this handful of large technology companies. But I also think it represents a big opportunity that for for people to dream a different world and different systems into existence, and maybe that includes something like a universal basic income, or maybe actually we can use AI systems themselves to handle the distribution of resources such that we don't even need money. And actually, maybe the smarter objective is to aim for a world without money, where people simply can have what they need, get what they need, without needing to kind of have that intermediary in a way. So this is we didn't get into it too much that time. But that's another area that I'm spending quite a lot of time thinking about, and sometimes being fearful of, sometimes being very excited about. But maybe that's for another conversation sometime.
Or maybe we could actually pick it up. Like actually before I said we're coming to a close, in my mind I had these two streams. I was like, actually I want to ask you about AI. And at the same time I felt it was such a beautiful look into the future and bright. Like so I thought maybe a close. But if you're excited about it, let's pick up the AI train. My question would have been, and now is, how do you see, as I know that AI is one of your big passion projects, not projects, but interests that you have. How do you see, can we use AI for the greater good? And also, especially like being in these type of communities, being in this network of communities, like if we see this as one major contribution to this beautiful heart world our hearts knows possible, what is the role of AI?
Yeah. I think the answer is we don't completely know the answer to that question yet, but like I feel like we should be experimenting and seeing what ways it does feel useful and healthy, and in what ways it maybe doesn't. Um, something I hooked up over just over the past few weeks at Lakefront is, I mean, a relatively simple system of just like kind of exporting all of our Slack conversations from the last few months, Slack being our main kind of conversation platform, um, and then hooking that up in such a way such that you can kind of just ask questions on a Slack channel and kind of like get answers back from an AI that has the context of these conversations from these last months. And the experiments I've done with that have been quite promising. Like it's the so you could certainly imagine that being useful, at least for people that are new to these communities. That sometimes it can seem a bit overwhelming. Of wow, this seems like there's so much to digest now. There's so many conversations that already happened or like happening that like it can be very difficult to maybe to kind of get up to speed. To have this uh, uh, like very smart, infinitely patient, like kind of virtual buddy who can actually like hold your hand in those initial stages of figuring out, okay, what is this community about and how does it really work? I think is like a very good complement to a human buddy, which of course we also have such a system at Lakefront that every new resident gets a human buddy or mentor. So that's one piece that comes to mind. Yeah, I think, it's one of the most notable new AI models is so-called Nano Banana, or Google's new image model within Gemini Flash. Um, this is fantastic for, you can give it a picture of a scene and ask it like, okay, imagine, give it a picture of like a street in a town, and then say, imagine this same street in a solar punk future in 2050 or something. And it's very very good at like maintaining like all of the kind of structure. Like it really will look like the same street and kind of like fundamentally the same buildings, but like suddenly, like there's trees everywhere and there's solar panels and there's like people like on some hoverboards like maybe going down the street and so on. So um the fact that this image technology has become like a very powerful bicycle for the imagination, if you like something that might have taken was kind of possible before, but you would have had to work with like someone very skilled in Photoshop for like a couple of weeks to like get an image of that quality before you could be like, oh yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like it's now possible to create these to kind of uh, transfer our imagination or our visual dreams that we have like onto paper or onto a screen in a very short space of time for very cheaply. So um, it's we're kind of entering this age of abundant intelligence is maybe one way of thinking about it, where intelligence in our society right now is kind of often an important um, just defining factor in whether one project or even person kind of is successful in life. And I think that's rapidly is rapidly changing. That like there's this kind of great equalizing when it comes to intelligence, but there are going to be other qualities that then become more important, or at least relatively more important, which I think might include like imagination, taste, wisdom, agency. I think all of those, we're going to be hearing a lot more about all of those qualities, and like kind of, it's going to be less important what someone's IQ was or wasn't, because like there are going to be machines that are like more intelligent than the vast majority of humanity that we can all use uh, very easily and cheaply. But this is one of the reasons I'm most fascinated in AI, I guess, is because it's maybe really helping us understand like what really is it to be human? What is it that humans have that these machines don't? And I want to believe there's something. I hope there's something. But it's far from clear like what exactly that thing is. Like we're kind of all in the process of figuring that out right now.
I find it very fascinating also when you speak about taste. and this music producer, Rick Rubin, comes to my mind. And he was like hired by the greatest artists of all times. And he also says about himself that he doesn't really play an instrument. And then sometimes people ask him, like, but why do people really want to, like, world-class bands, Foo Fighters, for example, why do they hire you? And he says, basically because of my taste. Um, and I find this so interesting because if we now have tools that are infinitely intelligent and creative, so to say, we can create everything that we can imagine. And then it really comes down, at least in one dimension, to taste. Like, do I like it or not? And how would I love this composition to be? And I find it interesting also when it comes, for example, to this aspect of community. What does taste and community look like? Um, and how will AI inform us on how we shape communities? It's fascinating. No one knows, right?
We're going to be figuring out some of these questions together over the coming months and years at Lakefront, I guess.
What I enjoyed about this little project that you started with analyzing our entire like Slack conversation on within our Lakefront network or like Lakefront as a community was I found it so interesting that we can actually analyze through AI dynamics within social systems. Yes. And when I read the analysis of the AI, like analyzing power dynamics based on conversations, I found it incredibly accurate. And I was just blown away. And knowing that this is just the beginning of some kind of exponential development is just fascinating.
Yeah, these systems are, I mean, are capable of picking up on quite kind of subtle relational dynamics. I find there's actually one of my favorite AI benchmarks is called EQ Bench, which is measuring emotional intelligence of AIs. And I guess the most important point is like some AIs are much more emotionally intelligent than others, and maybe none of them are as good as as emotionally intelligent as the most emotionally intelligent humans. But we're heading in that direction, um, and yeah, they're already at a point in which they're kind of capable of picking up not just on what's said, but the kind of unsaid things in these kind of conversations and producing quite effective analysis of things like power and influence in communities.
Do you know by chance, like more or less, what the benchmark currently is? Like, which of these AI models is currently on the forefront today?
It's usually the models from Anthropic do well, so Claude and the various Claudes. As far as I remember, Claude Opus 4.1, the latest version of Opus, is tops those charts. Anthropic have generally been like interested in having kind of emotionally intelligent form models that are actually also very good at coding on one hand, and and the OpenAI and their ChatGPT and GPT models, or now their kind of also their O series before it became GPT-5, um, were much more interested in like mathematics and physics, and actually troublingly also. OpenAI's models were the most sycophantic. This was like kind of was quite a big topic in the news a couple of months ago. Like when they made an update to ChatGPT, whatever you said to ChatGPT, it would reply with like, "Wow, you're so good. That's such a good idea. That's brilliant. That's the most profound thing I've ever heard." And, it was you wouldn't have expected any reasonable human to be responding in the same way. Like, but it's that's an interesting situation because, of course, it's many people love to be told that they're brilliant. I read some really sad stuff. Like someone saying, like, I kind of knew that AI was like kind of being a sycophant, this kind of like this kind of bullshit, but I still loved it because no one's ever told me that they loved me. Like from like someone just like kind of like lonely single man somewhere in the United States, and so ties in with this kind of these kind of rising stories of people having like AI girlfriends and AI boyfriends and AI companions in general. So I think we're gonna continue to hear a lot more of this, and I think uh, uh, it's a bit of an indictment of our society. Like that if have we made it so difficult to like meet people and connect with people and fall in love with people to to start a family that people would like feel they've got no choice in a way or like but to do it with a machine. Like, I yeah I would hopefully it acts as a bit of a wake up call if people are like choosing AIs over other human beings that like we need this is one of the other reasons we need to reconfigure society in some radically different ways such that we can create this more loving society but also just start falling in love with with one another again, including having babies. Right, it's like the kind of like birth rates all across the Western world are like well below replacement level. I was reading an article about Greece this morning saying that the Greek government have just introduced like the very significant financial measures like a baby bonus if like people choose to have like a child in Greece now, because it's a serious problem. It's like in 100 years many of these countries could essentially like have disappeared if they're choosing to not have to have children at just the same rates they're having now. So um, hopefully we can find ways in which AI is actually helping us to return to our humanity and to one another, and not just like sucking us into these virtual holes. Let's see.
Fingers crossed, and I also hope that communities like Lakefront can have a contribution where people can actually meet other people. And it's very easy because you just open the door, walk down the hallway, and then you bump not into another AI, but into another human, and you can have like an actually human conversation. And I'm, also personally very grateful that I also get to live there and that we get to spend time together in this wonderful place. Um, Now I actually feel like this conversation is coming to a perfect close. If there's anything else that you would like to share, for example, people that you want people to know about you, or just
Yeah. Well, I have a website at stephenreid.net, Stephen with a PH and Reid REID. So we'll put that in some kind of show notes, I guess. And we will be running more Futurecraft retreats and residencies over the coming years, I suspect. So that's at futurecraft.life. And check out the Dandelion events platform at dandelion.events as well. So yeah, a bunch of links that we can include there.
amazing. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you for being today's guest on the Lakefront podcast. And for everyone else, I'm looking forward to talking to you in the next episode. Bye bye.